Web scraping enables you to interact with websites using code. This enables you to interact with millions of websites automatically and in a short amount of time. In this video, I will teach you the basics of web scraping, some tools and techniques that you should know, as well as how to get started using Puppeteer, a Node.js JavaScript library. Now, this video is aimed at anyone who has experience with JavaScript. If you know what an NPM module is and how to install it, you should be good. If you're looking for a more advanced tutorial, I will be publishing one soon that shows you how to scrape websites that don't want you to scrape them. Also, do check out the description for links to the full code and the full script of this video. If you guys want to check that out, go right ahead. Here's what we'll be learning in this video. Timestamps are in the video description, so let's get started. Think of web scraping like having a robot browse the web for you. It sees whatever it is you can see, and it can only do whatever it is you can do on that website, but it's a robot, so it can do things way faster and for much longer. Web scraping has a lot of potential. Here are some things you can do with it. You can scrape the entire course catalog for your school's academic year and use the data to build a new app for course selection. You can train AI models using data you scrape from the internet. If you're feeling devious, you can spread misinformation by creating social media bots to post on your behalf. Or what I'm personally working on, using scrape data to create a search engine for indie tech products. My go-to for web scraping is Puppeteer. It is a Node.js library. It works by spinning up an instance of Chrome in the background and interacting with it through code. I primarily use Puppeteer even after having tried and looked into some of the alternatives. Things like Selenium, Playwright, or even the more traditional methods of web scraping. You should note that Selenium and Playwright support multiple languages and multiple browsers, but they're primarily created to help with testing. In my opinion, Puppeteer stands out solely because it focuses on being a browser automation tool. It was created and supported by Google, and it is fast specifically because it uses the DevTools protocol. Think of how you can use the console in Browser Inspector to mess with web pages. That's sort of like what the DevTools protocol allows Puppeteer to do. Also, being forced into JavaScript and Chrome isn't that bad considering JavaScript's awesome and almost all websites work on Chrome. Now, I would like to add that Playwright is a newer library created by the original team that created Puppeteer. However, now they've moved to Microsoft. It's very similar to Puppeteer and supports multiple languages and browsers, like I said before. However, I personally still prefer Puppeteer and think that it's better for most web scraping purposes and not just for testing. Before we get into the tutorial, I should add that you should be careful when you start web scraping. When you web scrape, you might accidentally trigger website defenses that may temporarily block your IP address from accessing that website. Also, scraping publicly available data is fine, but scraping private, sensitive information might not be legal, especially if you want to use the data for commercial use. Speaking of, you should know that creating your own web scraping script might not be the best solution for your use case. There are paid services out there that will help you do this. One final thing to note is that before scraping any website, you should probably try to see if there are any publicly available APIs that you can use instead of having to create your own scraping script to get stuff from the front end. Doing this can save you tons of time and can give you more reliable data. Now for the tutorial section. We will be building a Wikipedia scraper. This is a short and simple project to get you guys up to speed with all the basics and fundamentals of web scraping in Puppeteer. So our Wikipedia scraper will be a script that does the following. It'll go to a Wikipedia page, it'll take a screenshot, it'll grab all of its text contents as a string, and it'll grab all the references in that Wikipedia article. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is to create a new folder for our project. I'll call it web scraping tutorial. Now go ahead and open this folder in any code editor that you use. Assuming you have Node and npm and everything installed, run npm init. Just want to initialize our project here. I'll just do the basics for everything. And then you're going to want to install Puppeteer. So npm install Puppeteer. All right, now let's create the file for our script. You can call this whatever you want. Great. And first thing you want to do is we want to import Puppeteer. Now, if you guys want to go ahead and use ES6 and that import statement, go ahead. So now that we have this, we want to tell Puppeteer to create a new Chrome browser instance. To do that, we'll use this launch function. Now, this launch function takes in options as parameter. They're optional, but one of the options I'm going to set right now is pretty important. It's called headless. I'm going to set that to false. So what does headless do? If headless is true, Puppeteer will launch this Chrome instance in the background and it won't render it to us at all. Now, that's great if you're optimizing for speed, but right now I'm doing this tutorial for demo purposes, so I want you guys to be able to see the browser and everything that's happening, but also this can also help you debug. So we call this function, now this is an asynchronous function. It will return the browser instance that we want to mess with. So let's make a callback function. Now this callback function, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make it asynchronous. Now I made it asynchronous because Puppeteer has a lot of asynchronous functions in it. So we want to use the await syntax, right? Great, now that we have our browser open, we want to go ahead and create a page. Syntax is pretty simple, and now that we have a page, we want to tell it to go to a URL. Now we need to give it a URL to go to. So go ahead and go to your browser and find a Wikipedia article that you want to scrape. So this is the article that I want to scrape. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy that, and I'm going to paste it here. Let's see what happens when we run the script. Type in node, scrape.js or whatever your file is, and let's see what happens. Browser was open, page was open, and we went to the Wikipedia page. Awesome. One of the things you might want to use Puppeteer for is to take a bunch of screenshots. There's one very simple function here, and that is page.screenshot, and we need to give it a path argument to tell it where to save the file to. So here I have it saved to test.png, so let's run our script again. Let's Control-C to end the previous script, and now if we go back to our code editor here, you can see that we did indeed take this screenshot. Awesome. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and take the contents of the entire article. Well, I'm going to introduce to you a very important function, page.evaluate. So what this function does is it takes a function, a page function, as its argument. Whatever you put in here will not be run here. It'll be run in the context of the page. So if you remember how I talked about Puppeteer uses the DevTool protocol, and that's like going into the browser and then clicking inspect and going into the console, this evaluate function does basically that. Let's say I write console.log hello. If we run this, the console.log won't appear in our terminal. Instead, it will appear in the console here. So this is where your JavaScript background should come into play. If you understand how to manipulate the DOM, if you understand how to select elements and get data from them using JavaScript already in normal web pages, you're basically set because you can just apply that knowledge here. Now, if that's some knowledge that you're interested in learning and you want me to make a video about it, do say something in the comments, and I'll be sure to think about it, and I'll probably make one. One thing you should know is that whatever you return here, even though this is being run in the context of the web page, once the promise from page.eval resolves, the return value will be returned. So results will get this empty string that we're returning here. Now let's do some investigative work to find out how we're going to get all the contents of a Wikipedia article. So going back to our Chromium instance here, most of web scraping is going to be us looking at the actual website and finding out what the HTML structure is like and what sort of strategies we can use to get the data we want. I'm going to define content as everything here. So by inspecting this element here, we could see that it's part of this content div class, but also that all of the information here seems to be held in p tags, right? So one possible strategy we could do is, why don't we take all of the paragraph tags from this div here, and we just grab the text from the paragraph tags. So let's implement that. So using some JavaScript knowledge here, let's first select the div tag that holds all of the content. So I'm checking here and I see that the ID for this div is MW content text. Great, so this is the line. Now, if you don't know what I'm doing here, look up what CSS selectors are, look up what document.query selector does. And basically what this is saying is I'm going to be selecting the element inside the page that has this ID, which we can see from going to the page. Next, let's get all of the paragraph tags. Then finally, let's iterate over these paragraph tags and grab their inner text. Great, so I collect them all in article contents, and now let's return article contents. Now let's console.log those results, and let's run the script again. As you can see in our terminal, we returned all of the data that we got from the Wikipedia page. Awesome. So now, if this was an actual project, you might want to save this somewhere in a CSV file or something. Great. So now the second part was we wanted to get all the references of the page, right? So let's do some more investigative work. Head back to the Chrome browser and let's see how we want to do this. Well, if we click inspect, okay, well, we can see that, all of the references are in an ordered list of class references. So maybe what we could do is we could select for ordered list of class references, and then we can go down these list items, and then we can take the text there. Here I'm selecting for the references list. Then I'm getting the list items from there. And finally, we iterate over the list, and we add the contents to the references array. Now, how do we know that this code will actually work, right? I mean, we know the other one worked, but how do we know that we're selecting for the right elements and we're grabbing the right data? Well, we could just use the console, right? So let's just copy all of this code, head back to your Chromium instance, and then just go to the console and paste, and then click, and then check out references and what that actually selects for. Well, okay, Frank Hauser, David B. Okay, that seems kind of right. Okay, and why don't we check for the references list and what we're selecting there? Well, when we do that and when we hover over it, we can see visually. So this could be a very useful tool. Awesome. So I went ahead and just modified the return statement so that we return both references and article contents. So now results will be an object containing these two values. So go ahead and in the bottom here, let's tell Puppeteer to close the page. Now let's tell Puppeteer to close the browser. Now, what happens if we set the headless mode that we set in the beginning to true? You can see that the script runs without the browser page popping up. And as a side note, there was this warning about how they want us to use headless equals new. For the purposes of this tutorial, it doesn't really matter. Sometimes you might be scraping websites that take longer to load, or maybe they have some sort of dynamic content and you are waiting for a certain element to pop up on screen. Another useful set of functions are these wait functions. A very useful one is the wait for selector function. So what this function does is it continuously pulls the page and it waits for a certain selector to pop up. And if it doesn't pop up after a certain amount of time, then it will throw an error. Let's say I don't want to start scraping until there is this main content div that's present, just to be sure. So we can say, wait for selector, our selector, and we can even set a custom timeout. Now, I think the default timeout is like 30 seconds. And if you're scraping a large number of websites, that can really slow things down when, there are invalid links or whatever. So keep this function in mind. And that is that. Now, if you're interested in a more advanced tutorial, I'm publishing one that goes over how you can scrape sites that don't want you to scrape them. So this will go over things like proxies, how to authenticate using Puppeteer, and all that fun stuff. So if you're interested in that, do check that video out. As for this video, thanks so much for watching. If you want to check out any of the code pointers, there's a public GitHub repo in the description below. Link to that will be in the description below. It also contains the script and the presentation for today's video. So again, thanks very much for watching. Please do like, comment, and subscribe. I mean, this is my very first video out here. Hopefully it does well. And yeah, see you guys soon. Take care.